So living big is this question: what boundaries need to be in place for us to stay in our integrity and be generous toward other people? So it's not just what's the most grace I can offer someone, what's the most generosity I can offer someone. It's really about what boundaries need to be set up in my life in order for me to stay in my integrity and be generous toward people. That's the question. So let's break these apart. Let's break these words down a little bit. Boundaries. Boundaries are the easiest way to explain boundaries. What's okay and what's not okay. Integrity. Choosing courage over comfort. Choosing what's right over what's fun, fast, and easy. And not professing our values, but practicing our values. And then generosity is really what's the best assumption that we can make about people. It's assuming people are doing the best they can. So living big, generosity without boundaries is, to me, an equation that equals resentment every time, or frustration. So living big is really about what boundaries need to be in place in order for me to stay in my integrity and be generous toward other people. So here's the thing. Let me use a great example. This is one of those topics that we need to understand in our heart and our heads in order to make sense of it. So every year, I have a big, this is not true, but every year I have a big holiday party. And this is something that came up in a story that came up in the research. And I want to invite you. We're dear friends. We've been friends for 20 years. But every year at this party, you get so drunk, you make a scene. Last year you threw up. The year before you got in a big sprawling fight with your husband. So I want to be generous about my assumptions with you. I want to work from a place where I believe you're doing the best you can. So what boundaries need to be in place in order for me to be in my integrity and also be generous? So here for me is what that would look like. And I actually draw on personal experience for this conversation. I really care about you. I'm excited about having you at the party with my friends and family. The last couple of times you've come, you've gotten so drunk that you've either been sick or you got into a screaming match with your husband. That's not okay. Boundaries are really simple. We make them confusing. Here's what a boundary is. A boundary is what's okay and what's not okay. So it's okay for you to come. It's okay for you to have a couple of cocktails and have a good time. It's not okay for you to get drunk and smashed. My kids are there. My family's there. It's not appropriate. I hope you come. But here's what kind of the rules are for that night. Now, I can stay in my integrity and be generous towards you, because the minute someone's behavior hurts us or takes advantage of us or puts us down or puts us in a bad situation, how do we be generous? We can't. Boundaries are, I love you, I want to be with you, here's what's okay and here's what's not okay. This is how it's going to work. This is how it has to be in order for me to be in my integrity and be with you. Work. Oh my gosh. I tell the story of talking about this at West Point in a focus group where I said, what if people were doing the best they could? And I asked everyone to think of someone for the example, just like I asked you to. And one of the officers I was talking to pictured someone who worked for him, who was constantly not living up to his, the expectations that had been set for him by his team. And the first thing he did is he looked at me and said, I believe your intel is not correct, ma'am. And I was like, what intel? And he's like, I do not believe he's doing the best he can. I said, no, I'm telling you, he's doing the best he can. What if I'm ordering you and saying he is absolutely 100% perfect intelligence? He's doing the best he can. And he just started shifting in his chair and got so uncomfortable. And he said, ma'am, I'm going to have to move the rock. And I said, what does that mean? And he said, every day I get to work and I kick the rock and I badger the rock and I push the rock. And I would feel pretty terrible if I knew he was doing the best he could, because if he was really doing the best he could, and all these change efforts I've tried to make with him weren't working because he's just in the wrong job, doing the wrong thing, then I would have to move him into something he'd be better at doing. And he was like, I actually feel like a real jerk. And I said, we can't. And let me tell you, assuming that people are doing, let me give you all of the resistance. This is called the guess and address. I'm going to guess what you're thinking, and I'm going to address it. Because otherwise you'll shut down this video and you'll say, oh God, that was such BS. People are not doing the best they can. What does that mean, that no one can grow or learn? Of course we can grow and learn. Of course we can change. Of course we can get better. But that doesn't, you can hold and straddle the tension of we can grow and learn and get better. But at any given moment, people are really trying to do the best they can with what they have. And our bests are all different. And so for this lesson, this final lesson, here's my hope for you and my hope for me, is that we can move through the world with very clear boundaries and a very strong sense of integrity and be really generous toward other people in our assumptions. I mean, for me, even when Steve does something that I want to perceive as hurtful, to be able to assume that his intentions were not bad and ask him about it. And then to say, when you said this, it hurt my feelings. And he was like, oh, well, I'm really, maybe he'll say, oh, well, you made me mad. And I'll say, you know what? I get it. I'm sure I make you mad all the time. Here's what's okay and here's what's not okay. If you're pissed at me, here's what we can talk about. But this is hurtful to me. Or if he said, oh my God, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. I'm going to assume he does the best I can. And let me tell you, big is brave and big is vulnerable. When you assume people are doing the best they can. And so instead of railing on them, you ask questions. Help me understand what's going on. How can I be supportive? What do you need to be successful? It changes everything. My favorite answer, I've interviewed now, right over 100 people around this question. I have to say my favorite answer came from Steve, my husband, who kind of halfway into this research on whether people believe people are doing the best they can, I sat down with Steve and said, do you think people are doing the best they can? And you have to understand Steve a little bit. He's a pediatrician, so he sees the very best in people and the very worst. And he thought about it for a really long time, and he said, I actually don't know if people are doing the best they can or if they're not. But what I do know for certain is that my life is better when I work from the assumption that people are doing the best they can. It doesn't change anything for us. It doesn't change holding people accountable. It doesn't change demanding respect from people. It doesn't change anything, except it makes our life better when we move through it, giving people the benefit of the doubt. And to me, living big, this idea of living with boundaries, integrity, and generosity is a real practice area where everything we've done together around rising strong comes together. And it's how we take all of this and put it into practice every day, not just getting up from a fall, but from preventing falls. The more we live big, the less we fall. And when we do fall, the quicker we can get up. So I'll make a commitment to you to practice living big. I'm not great at it. I'm going to tell you right off the bat, my default thinking when someone does something is, oh, they need to get their crap together. And then I have to back myself into it. But I think it'll change your life.